Joining me today on Market Catalyst is Andrew Pierce, who is a vice president and project executive with Suffolk Construction. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So one of the projects you're currently working on is one of our biggest projects here in downtown St. Pete, which is the Casamatitas property at 400 Central. How's that going?
Excellent project. Great developer right in downtown St. Pete. 46-story condo tower. Beautiful building. We're currently on the 13th floor, have started some interior fit out. So we're seeing the first sets of condos go up on the second floor. They actually have some lower level 2-story penthouses kind of right above street level on the second and third floor, which is pretty unique for a condo building. Typically, we only see those larger scale units on the top floors with the best views. But, given the presence in that neighborhood, they put an investment on some of the lower floors to, get people really more involved in the community as opposed to, kind of being at the top of the tower.
Yeah, there's some of those 2-story condos right above the action on Beach Drive too, and I think that is great. You're sitting out; it's almost like I won't say a Mardi Gras feel, but you're sitting out on your balcony, and you're literally right over the street, and people are buzzing back and forth, and it really does make you feel connected to the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have some office space next door where when we did the big mat pour back in May, they actually held a watch party at the office next door, had some drinks, had some catering, interacted with our team, came out to check out the mat, 650 concrete trucks rolling through downtown Friday night into Saturday morning attracts a lot of attention. So, the local businesses and community kind of all got involved in the action. It was planned. There was notices put out. There was almost a happy hour vibe on the block around that big milestone.
And this is, a higher end building. So, we're going to talk a little bit about mixed use. We're going to talk a little bit about luxury. Let's start right there. You mentioned, the community, and it's in the Catalyst comments. A lot of times when we announce new construction, a lot of times they are higher end properties, which makes sense for downtown. And those are probably the most newsworthy. So there's probably a little bit of a what gets reported bias involved in that. But in general, when you look at a city that's emerging like St. Pete, how are we able to support more luxury units, and what's sort of the mix that you typically see in cities with trying to have some affordable housing, mid-range housing, and luxury housing?
So us here at Suffolk as the general contractor, we do the wide range, right? We do the market rate multifamily, we'll do the high-end condos, and we've also done a bunch of affordable housing. We recently in 2021 finished an affordable housing development over in Tampa, the West River District. It was 300 units of affordable housing, a 5-phase project. So we did the first 3 buildings on that project there. So while we see the high-end stuff continuing to come up in prime locations, we see the city's investment and the developers' investment in that affordable and market rate housing. We've also looked at a couple other projects in South St. Pete, which what they call workforce housing. So it's not subsidized by the city or by the county, but it's designed with a 30% rate of workforce housing. So average people, not doctors, lawyers, etc. That mid-range, more affordable housing, as opposed to it's setting the trend with a true market rate like you'd see at a Water Street or right downtown in St. Pete by 400 Central.
And looking at it from the construction / developer side, obviously the luxury stuff is more profitable than the affordable stuff. And there needs to be a lot of times to even make it work at all, subsidies and things like that. So what would be your advice, I would say, to communities that are looking to make more affordable housing available, workforce housing too? What are the strategies that you on the construction side think work the best and would advocate for more of?
I think you got to find the blend between the market rate, the super high end stuff like your 400 Central, which brings in that additional revenue, additional businesses, obviously additional taxes for the community, so that we can subsidize and make that affordable housing within that same community. Some people have what I would call more of a negative stigma around affordable housing. But when I look around, downtown Tampa, downtown St. Pete, affordable housing is more for, the working class people. It's not, the typical, Section 8 or the previous, what was thought of as affordable housing. It's truly becoming, a market rate for the average person as opposed to what the industry deems market rate, which is, truly what the market will bear in terms of rents.
Yeah, so I mean, really, even now, teachers and policemen are in sort of that affordable housing range because the higher end is there's so much demand at the higher end.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, it's truly the working class people as opposed to, the traditional subsidized cost of housing by the local or state governments. Right. It's a different rent rate.
And what's the current energy around office space? Obviously, COVID changed things. We had a lot more work from home. We've had some coming back to that, specifically in St. Pete. What's our demand supply balance now for Class A office space?
So I think we're seeing the true Class A office space make a major return. I can tell you at our office here in Water Street, they are building out the last of a 3,000 square foot build out, and the building is 100% leased and occupied. We're looking at a couple projects in Tampa as well as in Sarasota and St. Pete for a true high end Class A office space. Those companies that are truly making that investment in an office want the amenities. They want the outdoor space. They want the walkable restaurants. They want everything, right? They're not going to go into those old 80s, 90s office parks on the outskirts of cities where people are parking in major parking lots, right? They truly want it to be an experience when people come to work. They want them to be involved in the community, go out to lunch, be able to go to sporting events, Lightning games, Rays games, and truly spend an enjoyable portion of their time in the office. So the designs and the construction we're seeing in that Class A space is more mirroring what we're seeing in the multifamily and high-end condos. It's completely different where we're seeing rooftop amenities, outdoor meeting spaces, full retail on the bottom for restaurant spaces and small shopping. It's almost blending the multifamily to the Class A now, which is, something that is wildly different from what we've seen over the last 20 years.
Yeah, that kind of begs the question. Something that doesn't get talked about a lot, I don't think, is there also, as more money specifically again in St. Pete flows in, we talk about the marina and how there's not room for the large luxury yachts. Is there emerging a Class A plus demand where even what would be considered traditional luxury condos there's a demand for stuff that's even bigger and better and more, with higher end amenities than that?
I would think so, especially as we see some of these major Fortune 500 companies want to move major offices to the Tampa Bay market, whether that's St. Pete, Tampa Bay. That's kind of the model that was done here where our office is at Water Street. They have a client that has, the top 5 stories of this building. So you can afford to add those major amenities when you have a true anchor client that's going to take 50%, 30% of your building. It makes that investment more long term when they're spending the money to fit out 5 floors of that A plus office space. You want them to stay. You want their employees to utilize the office, visit the businesses downtown. It also makes more sense for the city to put some investment in. Like there was a program here at Water Street where the city invested in some of the hardscape, to make it truly a downtown experience. Nice wide sidewalks, outdoor dining, very walkable. There's events down here right outside of our building, concerts, shows, different things, smaller scale, but it's still we get a full agenda every month of all the events that they're hosting outside of our office. And I think as you see that trend continue, you get the blend of that mixed use condo plus that Class A plus office space. You're truly building a community where you work.
And obviously, demand has been hot for the last couple of years for all sorts of new construction, but with COVID and other factors, supply chains got disrupted. So where are we at now with the supply chain? I've heard where there was months wait to get certain subcontractors. Now they're starting to become a little more available. So are things starting to open up a little bit? with regard to supply of both materials and labor? And do you think that will lead potentially to a reduction in costs?
I think the supply in terms of material has returned to normal. We're still seeing crazy lead times on switchgear, generators, major electrical equipment seems to be the biggest, what we call the longest pole in the tent in our schedules. But glass, which is typically a long lead item, has returned to its normal, 12 to 16 weeks, which is how it's been for the last 20 years. Same thing with, tile, any kind of other materials. The biggest challenge we're still seeing is in the labor market. It is, like you said, very busy still with commercial construction in the Tampa Bay region, and that is our biggest challenge right now. But I can tell you what we're seeing in projects that we're bidding and buying out now. The labor market is, very strong for what I would say the third quarter of next year. A lot of subcontractors looking to fill their backlog, getting aggressive with pricing. So we're seeing a shift. I wouldn't say we're seeing a downturn in pricing, but we're back to a competitive market, right? Where you're receiving, let's use electrical, for example. You'll receive 3 electrical bids and you'll actually get a best and final, as opposed to, this is my number, take it or leave it. I got 5 other projects I'm about to build right now. So it's at least, turning back in that direction where, there are options out there. People are looking for work. You're seeing, obviously everybody knows what's going on with interest rates. So you're seeing, those marginal deals aren't penciling. So while those might have been in previous subcontractors' backlogs, they're looking to fill it with, secured financing jobs that are guaranteed to go, and they're willing to get aggressive for that pricing.
So that leads me to think that, their crystal ball kind of gets a little blurry around Q3 of next year. What's your feeling? Do you have any insight into where you think we're going to or how we're going to be looking in 2025, or what we should expect as far as a slowdown or uptick in development in the next 2 years or so?
I think it's going to stay pretty level, right? I mean, you still see the big developers, like we talked about, Katz Matisse at 400 Central. They're unbelievably bullish. They're constantly hunting for deals in the St. Pete, Tampa market, even as down far south as Sarasota. The Relateds of the world are well financed, well backed. Still going to be building well into 25. It's those upstart developers that we saw coming out of COVID that were looking at buying cheap land prices. Obviously, the price of that land has gone up. Now the deals don't pencil as well with the interest rates. So they're looking to sell the land to those major, well-established developers. And those are the kind of projects that are falling off the backlog. They'll get built. It just won't be built in 2024. It'll be the end of 2025. By the time that land transfers hands, it gets permitted, entitled, et cetera. So, I don't see a major slowdown in the market. You just might see a shift in some of the product types, like we talked about. I've looked at more kind of Class A office projects in the last year than I'd probably looked at in the last 5, and that's even before the office-based slowdown in COVID, which has been a pretty big surprise. But like I said, it's a true high-end community type office space, as opposed to what we saw 10 years ago with those outskirt office park developments that most companies, at least bigger companies that are interested in those spaces, are kind of no longer interested in that. That's where you get into the people would rather work from home than come to the office. So if you're going to get them to return to the office, you want to return them to a community that they want to be in.
Yeah, have to have the quality of life that we can't just be a massive downgrade from their home.
You got it.
Yeah. And obviously the historic gas plant redevelopment is a big deal here in St. Pete. Have you had any chances to connect with that project?
Yeah, so we were part of one of the development teams that was ultimately not selected for that project. We're still very, very bullish on that project. I mean, it is a massive development. Even when we were a part of one of those teams, there was no expectation that Suffolk could build all those projects, right? I mean, it's a massive development. You're talking 12, 15 buildings plus a stadium. There's no one single contractor that could handle all that work. So we're keeping a close eye on it. Very excited about that development. Obviously, it's an area that needs some redevelopment and rework, and I think it'll be fantastic for the community.
Wonderful. Well, it's a lot of insight. I really appreciate the time and sharing how things are going at 400 Central, and some of your views on other things. I should know you guys also built the Hard Rock, which is pretty cool, the casino in Tampa, and I've stopped by there once or twice and had a good time. That's a nice building.
That was actually the project that brought Suffolk to the Tampa market. So that was our first official project here in Tampa. We had a couple projects down in Sarasota and Bradenton that were managed out of our Sarah office, but we actually opened our Tampa office on the back of that Hard Rock project, and then continued at Water Street. Now we're working over in St. Pete, Sarasota. So that was my first project in Tampa as well. Was the Hard Rock.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, Andrew Pierce, thanks for your time, and thanks for joining us on Market Catalyst.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe.